Hello everyone, today I want to talk about the gaming laptop I personally use, the Acer Nitro 5AN51545, and share my real experience after using it for the past few years. I bought this laptop back in 2023 and since then I've used it for gaming, work and everyday tasks. And like most laptops, it's been through everything: heat, updates, dust, loud fans and the usual hardware wear over time. So today we're not going to talk about what this laptop was like when it was new. We are going to talk about what it has become after years of real use. The Acer Nitro 5 is a pretty typical representative of the mid-range gaming laptop segment. Nothing experimental here, everything is quite predictable: a black plastic body, aggressive lines, some gamer-style design elements and the classic red accents. The whole body is made of plastic. And I'll say right away, it's not premium plastic, but it doesn't feel extremely cheap either. The matte finish tends to collect fingerprints, so you'll probably end up wiping it quite often. Over time, small scratches can appear, especially if you move the laptop around a lot, but nothing critical. In terms of size, it's pretty standard for a gaming laptop. It's fairly thick and weighs about 2.3 kilograms. You definitely wouldn't call it an ultrabook. One thing I really like here is the hinges. Even after several years of use and despite the fact that I often move the laptop around, they are still solid. The screen stays firmly in place with no wobbling. You can't always open the lid with one hand, sometimes you have to hold the base, but it's been like that since day one. Overall, the design can be described like this: it's not amazing, but there is nothing to complain about either, just a typical Nitro design. When it comes to ports, the Acer Nitro 5 is pretty straightforward. You get 3 USB Type-A ports for peripherals, 1 USB-C port, unfortunately not Thunderbolt, HDMI for an external monitor, Ethernet, which is actually becoming rare in laptops in 2026, a combined 3.5mm audio jack and a Kensington lock. I wouldn't say the port placement is perfect. I personally got used to it and the cables don't bother me too much, but some people might not like the layout. Sure, there is no Thunderbolt or SD card reader, but honestly, for a gaming laptop that's not a big deal. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth have been completely reliable. I've never had any connection issues. The screen is probably not the strongest point of this laptop anymore. It's a 15.6-inch Full HD IPS panel with a 144Hz refresh rate. For gaming it's still perfectly usable, but if you're already used to a 27-inch monitor like I am, this screen definitely feels small. When I first bought the laptop, the image quality was quite good: smooth motion, minimal ghosting and decent viewing angles. Brightness is somewhere between average and slightly below average. Using it outside in direct sunlight isn't very comfortable, but indoors it's completely fine. Color reproduction is nothing special. The bigger issue is that over the years the monitor has started to age. Some ghosting and backlight bleed have appeared. For gaming that's obviously not ideal, but for work or casual use it's still acceptable. The ghosting most likely appeared due to overheating, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Now let's talk about the hardware. This configuration includes AMD Ryzen 5 5600H CPU, which by today's standards can already be considered somewhat outdated. NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3050 with a 4GB of VRAM. And since it uses a laptop version of the GPU, its performance is naturally lower than that of desktop graphics cards. Today it's not exactly ideal for modern games unless you play in Full HD with reduced settings. But it's still too early to completely write this GPU off. We'll talk about that in a moment. The laptop originally came with 16GB of RAM and I added another 16GB myself. The memory is Kingston DDR4. Technically the laptop supports up to 64GB, but realistically I don't need that much. Storage wise, it originally came with a 512GB SSD, and for my own comfort I added another 2TB drive, Crucial Micron M2. When I bought this laptop in 2023, it was a solid mid-range gaming machine that could comfortably run most games in Full HD, but what about in 2026? Older and well-optimized games runs perfectly fine, medium to high settings with stable, though not extremely high FPS. Esports titles like CS2 perform reasonably well. On average I get around 100 to 130 FPS. On my external 2K monitor it's closer to about 90 FPS. So overall gaming is still very playable. Newer titles naturally require lower graphics settings settings, ultra settings are basically out of the question. Let's take Naraka Blade Point and Where the Winds Meet as examples. These games already push this laptop quite hard. You can still play them on low settings, but high settings start causing noticeable issues. For example, in Naraka Blade Point at 2K resolution, which I'll show on the screen, the average FPS is somewhere between 60 and 100, depending on how dynamic the scene is and location. And since this is an esports style game where combo's reaction matter, higher FPS make a big difference. If you switch the graphics to high settings, FPS can drop to around 30, 50 and sometimes even down to 39. Where the Winds Meet is also quite demanding. On the laptop's native display it averages around 50 FPS, sometimes dropping to about 30, and that's not even on maximum settings. So at 2K resolution the game usually runs between 31 and 40 FPS depending on the scene, so here you basically have to choose better graphics or smoother performance. As I said earlier, the RTX 3050 no longer looks impressive in 2026, but it's still capable of running games just without unrealistic expectations. Now this is where things get interesting. The Nitro 5 runs hot, and I mean always hot. Under load the CPU temperature easily goes above 85 degrees and can reach around 90-91 degrees. After replacing the factory thermal materials, the situation improved. For the GPU I used Laird 607 thermal pads, and for the CPU I applied this one. Now the GPU usually stays between 75-86 degrees depending on the load. The fans are loud, very loud, you do get used to it over time, but if you're gaming without headphones, it honestly sounds like a plane taking off next to you. There is no way you could call this cooling system quiet. The factory thermal paste lasted me about 2.5 years before temperatures started rising. I also cleaned the laptop from dust fairly regularly, which definitely helped maintain performance. Another point worth mentioning is the keyboard. If someone who is used to a standard desktop keyboard tries it for the first time, it might feel a bit awkward. But since I've used laptops most of my life, it feels completely normal to me these days, though I mostly use it as a desktop replacement. The center of the laptop can get noticeably warm, especially during summer, but because I kept it closed under the desk, the heat probably affected the laptop itself, including the screen, which over time led to ghosting on the original display. Lately I've been using it as a desktop computer, so I don't really care anymore what happens to the built-in screen, but overall it's manageable. The touchpad area, interestingly enough, stays relatively cool. Still, the cooling system design feels a bit outdated, and Acer didn't really improve or update it for this model even back in 2023. Let's talk about the sound. To keep it short, it exists, it works, but don't expect anything impressive. For games and movies you'll definitely want to use headphones, although, to be fair, this is a common issue with most gaming laptops. The keyboard is full size and backlit. In my case, it's red backlighting with adjustable brightness, not RGB. K-Travel feels good, typing is comfortable, and I've never had any issues while gaming. Just try not to eat over the laptop too much. Cleaning debris from under the keys is a nightmare. The touchpad is large, precise and responsive. Now about the battery. For light tasks the laptop lasts a few hours. The longest I managed was about 5 hours with the backlight off and brightness lowered. But when gaming you can basically pretend the battery doesn't exist. You'll get about 40 to 50 minutes at best. That said, even after years of use, my battery hasn't degraded too much. Still, it's clearly a laptop designed to be used plugged in most of the time. So let's sum everything up. Pros: 144Hz display, still capable of gaming in Full HD and even with 2K monitor on medium or low settings. A good selection of ports, strong hinges, comfortable keyboard and in my case solid reliability. Cons: high temperatures, although they can be improved. RTX 3050 is already outdated. Modern games increasingly require more VRAM. Plastic body, weak speakers, very noisy under load. The Acer Nitro 5 was a good gaming laptop for its time. It's not perfect, it runs hard, it's loud, but it still does the job it was designed for. If you already own one, it can definitely keep serving you for a while longer, as long as you're willing to accept some compromises. Personally, I also believe that no laptop can fully replace a desktop PC unless you absolutely need portability. In the end, it all depends on your goals, your work tasks and the games you play. As for me, I don't think this laptop is bad. It's simply aging the way a mid-range gaming laptop normally does. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe and leave a like, it really helps the channel. I'll leave the names of all the components and thermal materials in the description. See you in the next video.